Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Whatever the I Want podcast, where I, your host, Gabby, get to talk about whatever the I want. And so, guys, I have so much that I want to share. I literally had the most cathartic cry in the shower last night. I was like, I'm just trying to smoke. I'm just trying to chill. And it was something that was just like, I don't know. Do you feel like there's like parts of like the deepest parts of your soul that are like still coming up that you kind of have to heal? I feel like there's still like some like little things inside of me that are like, I'm letting them come out. And it's such a great feeling. And, you know, there is something that I do want to share on the podcast, more than likely in a later episode, just because it is very heavy. And the last thing that I want is like to start off this season with something so heavy and kind of dark. So it's basically about childhood trauma. And I know that the episode is going to be emotionally draining, which now that I think about it, I woke up with swollen eyes and it makes sense because I was literally like boo-hoo crying in the shower. I had so many revelations. But so I basically wanted to go through my relationships, but I think first what I want to do is talk about myself in them. My first perceptions of love came from my parents, and my parents, for the most part, had a healthy relationship. You know, like I didn't see them argue. I never saw anyone raise their hand at anybody, at least at each other. Like, I mean, I got spanked as a kid, but you know, like my parents, I never saw like raise a hand at the other. I, watched my parents flirt, they'd hold hands while driving. My dad would smack my mom's butt, and like they would flirt with each other. They wouldn't really kiss a lot in front of us. To them, like PDAs, like EOEs, like do that behind closed doors. That's kind of how they are about PDA. I don't really care. When I went to Colombia, I saw people like basically having sex like outside. I mean, like mwah, mwah, like affection, like a mother, and I'm fine with that. I really don't care. I'm just like, okay, you do your thing. I'm fine with affection, especially considering that I am an affectionate person. Also, I just want to say how grateful I am because the sun is out. It was 12 degrees this morning, and the cold is whatever to me. Like everybody's like, it's so cold. And like, you can bundle up, and then you can like enjoy the weather. But for me, it's like, no bitch, it's the sun. Like I want the sun to be out, and the sun is out. And so I'm very happy. I'm also flying later today for a wedding. So I think that's why the topic of like love and relationships is on my mind. And so I'm like, I hope this lighting is okay, because we're getting back into the hang of all these things. So basically in relationships, I saw my parents, have a healthy relationship. I had my first, let's just take it all the way back. I'm in 6th grade. There's this boy that I like. I don't know how, but we magically become boyfriend and girlfriend. Never kissed, never. I don't even think we ever talked on the phone. At that point, phones did exist, and we were, like texting, but I don't even think we ever held hands. But he was my little boyfriend. And, okay, that was fine, nothing terrible happening there. Then I dated somebody in middle school, right? So my elementary school went from kindergarten to 6th. So I stayed there till 6th grade. In 7th grade, I date somebody in middle school who was Mexican. This might be where some of my trauma surrounding Hispanic guys starts. I know it does, actually. He was a fucking asshole. I mean, first of all, like he made me have like identity problems because he would call me gringa, because he was born in Mexico. And to a lot of Mexicans, that's what gringa means, right? I didn't know this until I was older, but it means like basically American born. It doesn't mean white, right? But to me growing up, I thought gringa meant white, right? And so he'd be like, you're a gringa or whatever. And I'm like, I'm literally Mexican. And he would tell me like, he would go from like hot to cold, like, you're the most beautiful girl in the world, to like, I never fucking want to see you again. You like lying ass bitch, hoe ass, blah, la, 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 la. Like, and I'm not saying I was perfect. I didn't know what relationships were, what they consisted of. You know, my parents didn't talk to me about relationships. So like, I didn't know that, like, you know, you're a kid. People are now giving me attention when I'm in middle school. I was a new girl. I got a lot of attention. I was getting flowers. Guys were giving me jewelry, and I'm talking about like gold jewelry. This one guy made me a necklace. I still have all of these things. Guys writing me songs. Those I don't have. My sister made me throw the poems and letters and things away because she was like, it's weird that you've held on to them for so long. But I literally held on to some of that stuff till I was like 18 years old, you know, from like 12, you know, like that's a long time. And even now I still have some things that I haven't let go of. Just because I'm an emotional being. Like I love these things, right? And it's like art that somebody made me. So like I low-key regret allowing my sister to convince me to like let go of things. I remember at some point she's like, no more stuffed animals. You're old. Like you're not a kid anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? And then now she has stuffed animals, but her perception of things were very different then. So this guy in middle school literally told me to off myself. He told me that I deserved to die. He told me, he dedicated a Lil Wayne song that goes, it's called Drop the World. And it literally says, bitch, I'm going to pick the world up and I'm going to drop it on your fucking head. Like he literally destroyed my self-esteem. And I'm 12. And this is what I think love is. And I think, you know, I see it from my parents and from everybody in my life that love is like you meet somebody when you're young and you are together for the rest of your lives. And my parents had met in middle school. So I guess I really thought that like I was going to meet the love of my life in middle school and we were going to make it work because that's what love was in my head. And honestly, at the time, that's what love was, right? That's why so many people didn't get divorced. That's why they stayed in relationships because they just thought that this was what was normal. And so I remember honestly feeling very suicidal. Like I always said, this episode was going to be lighter than the other ones, but like, bitch, it's really not that much lighter. So yeah, I really did kind of try. And thankfully I had people in my life who would remind me that like I would be okay. And after him, there was another boy that I dated who was the complete opposite. Very much so, like, you know, you're perfect, whatever. And a lot of the guys in middle school would always tell me like, you're so pretty. And they wouldn't tell me mean things, right? But my first actual boyfriend told me those terrible things, right? So then that's my self-esteem, you know, throughout my life. It started there. Just feeling unworthy, unwanted, and like absolute shit. And so, you know, I talked to guys here and there throughout my childhood, you know, and then it's not until it was around 16 years old that I see a guy walk into the gym and I'm like sitting next to one of my friends and I'm like, I want to get to know him. He's so cute. And I don't know why. It was just like a love at first sight type of thing. And I did everything that I could to like hang out with this guy. Thankfully, we had mutual friends in gym. So we would play like Foursquare together and all these things. And him and I dated for 4 years. Leading into college, we broke up once for a very short period of time. It was just really hard to let go of that relationship just because we had just known each other for so long. And even to this day, like I still feel like we'd be really good friends just because we didn't really have any major problems in our relationship. I just, you know, at the time that wasn't a thing. Like, how do you regulate your emotions? How do you, like, mental health was just still not something that was talked about. It was starting to be, but it still wasn't like what it is now. And I wasn't aware of myself as I am now. You know, I'm 18 trying to figure it out. And honestly, 18-year-olds nowadays are very different from how I was, you know, and that's 10 years ago. That's a decade. That's a long time, you know? And so I knew that I couldn't regulate my emotions well enough, but I do think we had a really good run. Like, I do think we had a lot of potential, but the main reason for that relationship ending was because I essentially got like really drunk at a party and I basically kissed somebody And I told him, and I can't remember at this point if I started already questioning the relationship or if this was something that made me question the relationship. But I basically kissed somebody. I called him. I fell asleep on the phone. Like, that's how drunk I was, just like crying and crying and crying. And we had to talk about it. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I did that to you. I can't live with myself. And, you know, he's like, do we need to open up the relationship? Like, what do you need? And I'm like, that's not fair to you. That is not fair to you for us to open up this relationship. And that's not something that I want. I'm monogamous. I want to just explore and be with one person. And so I remember it really hitting me. And again, I don't remember the timeline of things. I don't know if I just like blocked things out of like the proper timeline to make me feel better. I don't know. But which I probably did, to be fair. Or that was the last straw. I can't remember. But I remember him being on a family trip and he texted me he loved me and I just couldn't find myself to say it back. I just couldn't do it. I don't know. And I just felt like whenever we talk about our plans graduating from college, it was always like, I would follow you. Okay, wherever he's going is where I'm going to go. And I just felt like I just didn't really have plans for myself. Although looking back, I'm like, my plan was just to be a little YouTuber. Like, truthfully, it's what I've always wanted to do is content creation. And we both love to cook. And so we were like, we could have a cooking channel and this. But it was always still like whatever he wanted to do, I would follow. Wherever the world would take him, I would go. And I just found myself lost in the relationship. And so ultimately it ended. It was hard to break ways. I think in general, breakups are tough, but especially like your attachment to them, after so long, it's like you just get so used to waking up and seeing their text or calling them throughout your day. They become a part of your daily routine. And so, yeah, that relationship ends. Within a couple months, I meet somebody, and this person and I eventually talked for a while. And then we were probably talking for maybe like, because I think he wanted to ask me out on 420. That was like his thing. He wanted to ask me out on 420. And I was that the day that we started dating? I low-key think so. Or it was like the day before. He asked me out sometime around April for some reason. I just remember it being like around April. And I remember him saying like, I hope one day to ask you an even bigger question, but for now, like, will you be my girlfriend? And this guy I dated for 2 years. We did live together, and first boyfriend was long distance. First like real boyfriend of 4 years was long distance, for some of it because of college. So the next person I dated was for about 2 years. And I mean, we were really good. I've come to realize that my foundation with every single person I've dated has been our love for music. And this person specifically, we loved going to concerts, going to festivals, going to things together. And I mean, he really helped me find my love for music again. I mean, we would listen to albums whenever they were released. He would buy me vinyls that were signed by some of my favorite artists. He would buy me merch. Like, he loved music, and I loved that. I loved that we could share that. Although I realized at some point he liked a lot of really fucking sad, depressing music. Little did I realize was like, oh, he's depressed. He's depressed, and when people are depressed, in general, hurt people. So he hated himself, and he would take it out on me. And I'm like, I'm just trying to help. It hit a point where, I mean, it was just like the highs were so high and the lows were just so low. I remember at some points, like my car just being like packed with all my clothes. And I'm like, I'm going to fucking go. And it was just where I learned some of my toxicity, which thankfully no longer exists within me, was from a family member of mine, by marriage. Let me just add that. I watched her physically abuse men in my life, verbally, emotionally. I mean, and I grew up thinking she was the coolest person ever because she was the one trusted adult that I had. And I still love her to this day, regardless of these things. I mean, when you love people, you love them for the highs and the lows. And so, and I don't blame her, I think I've learned to not blame people that they only do these things because that's what they were taught was normal. And it's up to us to like change these things. And so I thought that was normal. I didn't realize that I learned this behavior from somebody, just like lashing out, screaming, and blaming people for triggering you. And I've come to realize that when you're triggered, I used to think like, well, you made me react this way. You made me raise my voice. You made me start screaming. You made me heated. You're making me like need to let this out like physically. And I've always kind of like not had like anger issues, but my sister will say that. And it is true. I didn't know how to regulate my emotions at a very, very young age because I don't think I had an outlet. But I mean, I would like scream into pillows and like punch them. And like I had to like, I just had like so much pent up anger. And I think that if I would have just had an artistic outlet at a very early age, I probably wouldn't have had so much anger inside. And so, yeah, I mean, I learned some terrible behavior from her down to like jealousy. I learned from her, you know, she'd be like looking at him like, why are you looking at that girl? You want to go be with her? Go fucking be with her. Why are you like, oh, you're going to go talk to your little hoes now? Okay, go ahead, be with your little hoes. You know, he was caught doing this. And like, I mean, she just like would just let everything out. And I'm just like, okay. And so I learned jealousy from her, to be honest, because I didn't ever see my mom being jealous. I saw my mom being insecure, but I never saw my mom being jealous, if like that makes any sense. And so, yeah, I learned jealousy from her. And I thought I thought that's what a relationship was. It was like, you know, like giving them attitude and like, you know, this like, oh, I can't fucking stand you. And then you have like this like intense makeup sex. And it's just like, that's not a relationship, that a healthy one at the very least. It's not a healthy relationship. And so, you know, things ended in that 2-year relationship. And I was very happy that they did, because I just felt like this relationship was no longer giving either of us anything. And honestly, we had like, I was just too afraid to leave because my dad had told me not to get into a relationship with him. And if there's one thing that I've learned throughout my life, it's that if my family tells me not to do something, I'm going to do it. It's that like rebellious part of me. I don't know. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking do it. You know, I don't give a fuck what you say. And then whenever I'm like, oh, this relationship is not for me, I need to leave. My nervous system is not regulated. I wasn't cognizant of these things. You know, I just have like really high anxiety. I was smoking a lot more weed because, I mean, truthfully, at that point in my life, like I hadn't really smoked much. I probably smoked like 2 or 3 times. Actually, no, my senior year of college, I started smoking more, actually my senior semester. But like I smoked once in high school, and then in college, it was really not till towards like the end of my senior year where I started smoking. Other than that, like I just drank when I was in college. I didn't drink underage. Or sorry, not underage, in high school. In college, there was underage drinking, let's be real. And so, yeah, eventually I leave that relationship, and I was living with him, and I'm like, do I leave? Like, where do I go? And my cousin ended up moving here to Illinois. And so she's like, come with me. And I'm like, bet say less. And so that's actually how I made my way up here, was leaving a relationship in Miami. And I made my way to Naperville, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I was very lost because in that relationship, there was a lot of, we tried going to therapy together. His therapist would gaslight the shit out of me, telling me that I'm the problem. And I'm just like, what do you like? And I have a friend who's a therapist, and she was like, first things first, if your partner's seeing a therapist, they should not be your couple's therapist. Like there's just bias there. She's like, you have your own separate therapist and you have your couple's therapist. And I was like, oh, but again, like I still wasn't cognizant of anything. I mean, I think some of it's just like your brain not being developed, and mental health still wasn't something that like I was super knowledgeable about, like just psychology in the brain, which is like a passion of mine, low key. So I do like learning about the brain now, but that wasn't something that I was like super aware of when I was younger, because I never took a psychology class, although I did for one day in high school. And I was like, this is so cool. I would love to learn about the brain. And here I am now learning about it on my own. So after that, I'm single for basically a whole year. I finally get my first dating app at 25. And I am like, I need to just meet people. Like, I think I'm ready to just meet somebody. And so I go on dates. I'm going on dates, you know, I'm going on sometimes like 2 dates a week. And then I'm just like, yeah, you know, I've met some cool people. Like, there was one guy that I liked who had just broken off an engagement not long before. And so he's like, I'm not looking for anything serious. So I'm like, okay, well, I am. So that ended. And then there was another guy that I liked who we just, for some reason, just didn't have a like physical connection, which was crazy because like, I mean, he was cute, you know, and it was like he had stayed the night at my house like a couple of times, completely clothed, never made a move. I think we'd only kissed a couple of times, but super respectful guy. I liked him as well. And there was one other guy who I really did like him. It would arguably say the most out of, I don't know, 15 people that I dated on Hinge. And I don't know, I was just like, there was just something missing, but I felt like something could grow from that. And so I'm literally close to deleting the app. I remember being in Florida and I'm like, do I delete it? Do I not delete it? And I can remember I watched Purple Hearts. And if you've never seen it, go watch it. It's on Netflix. I love Sophia Carson, and I can't remember the name of the main actor, but super handsome. So I'm just like, I want an army man, because the movie's basically about a couple and one of the guys in the army. And I'm like, I want an army man. And I remember just telling Christian that. And I just like kept low key manifesting, not realizing like what you say really does fucking matter. Like, I want an army man. But meanwhile, I'm on Hinge. And like every time I'd see anybody who was in the military, I'm like, no, red flag, red flag, red flag. But then eventually one guy likes my page and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to message him. Cause what pissed me off was like, he only liked my picture. Like, you know how many people on Hinge are like writing me like cute things, leaving me compliments, like doing, like trying, and this guy just like likes my photo, and I'm like, I message him, which let me tell you, first boyfriend I dated for 4 years, I messaged him and I was the one to pursue him. Second guy I dated, I also texted him first. And I mean, he was the one to approach me for a conversation in person, but I texted him first. And then with this guy, yeah, he liked my picture, but I messaged him. And so lo and behold, I messaged this guy. We start dating. And I remember kind of early on, I saw some red flags, but I was like, I don't know. Whenever you fall for somebody, you just kind of like throw everything out the window and you make up excuses for things because you're like, you know, like maybe this isn't who they are. Like, I don't know. Like, so I tolerated some things that I shouldn't have. And I also became somebody that I didn't like. I thought these were people bringing out these attributes in me, but it's like, no, babe, those attributes are basically who you are. And so you have to unlearn those patterns and stop, you know, being toxic. And so I essentially we dated for, I think, a year, and then we broke up. And I remember just being like, something has to fucking change. And we were at Barnes and Noble and I saw the book Attached, and for some reason some part of my soul was like, I want to get this book. And I didn't, but I started going to therapy after we broke up, and I moved back home to Florida temporarily because I'm like, I'm coming back to Illinois. Like, I don't know why. I was just so like stuck on being here and like stuck on wanting to make the relationship work. I think it's that we had a lot of really good foundational commonalities. And I honestly feel that way about everybody I've dated. We had a really good foundation, but I also feel like, maybe not say like a really good foundation. We had cracks in the foundation, but at that point I didn't know how to fill the cracks, but we still had a lot of things in common with everybody that I've dated, that I feel like if I was the person I am now, like maybe things would have been different, but that's not for me to sit here and like wonder or think. But I think at the same time, I would have needed the same thing expressed from them. So him and I broke up. I read Attached. I started reading a lot of mental health books. I locked in at the gym. I started like really trying to take care of my mental health because I just saw how anxious I was from the breakup. I was breaking out really bad. I was crying all the time. I lost so much weight at that point. Like in my relationship, I had been the heaviest I had ever been because I was so happy. We were drinking a lot. We were going out to eat. It was my first winter with the boyfriend. So we were just inside cuddling, And so I put on weight, and I was like, okay, something needs to change. Cause I was like, I loved how I looked when I was at my heaviest, but at the same time I was like, I don't recognize who this person is. And so I decided to quit drinking because of, yes, the physical components of it, but it was mostly because I didn't like who I was when I drank. It was hard for me to have one drink and to stop. And that's actually a form of alcoholism. A lot of people think alcoholism is like, you can't stop drinking, or like you have to have a drink all the time. And it's like, no, it can look like whenever you have one drink, you can't stop, which was what would happen to me. If you ever partied with me, it was like, let's keep going. Shots, another one. Why are you not drinking? Boring. Like I was that type of person. And, I don't know if I'll introduce it back into my life. I do consider like, maybe a glass of wine or like, maybe some champagne to celebrate something. I don't know what it's going to look like trying to introduce it back into my life. But it's just like, I just need to make sure I have control over it, because even with smoking, sometimes I have to tell myself like, okay, Gaby, like, you smoked a couple times this week, you got to slow down. Or like, I have to be mindful that I don't abuse things, because I do think that addictive personalities run in my family. Like my dad is a smoker, and a lot of people in my family smoke cigarettes. And so it's like, how can I have control over this? And so I'm trying my best to have control over social media and just all these other things in my life. And so basically I dated this person for, that year. And then I did my soul searching. And whenever we got back into the relationship, I really did become an entirely different person. I learned how to remove myself from situations. I learned to stop lashing out. I learned that my words do matter. I learned how to take a deep breath. I learned how to walk out of a room if I found myself getting heated. I learned how to, take a shower if I felt like I was, needing to just cool off. Like I really was doing the work. And, even he was like, you're right, like, and I mean, at first he's like, you didn't quit drinking, quit lying, or, like that's not who you are. And I'm like, but no, this is like, I became this person whenever we were apart. And I think it was hard for him to believe that people could change, because alcoholism is something that does run in his family. And that's actually a reason why I did stop drinking, was because of his family. And it was interesting because family members of his did kind of bring it up to me. They're like, are we the reason you stopped? Or like, we feel bad because we're drinking and you're not. And I'm like, don't feel bad. Like, it's not, this is a choice I make, and that's a choice that you make. And at some point he did say that he resented me. He's like, I do resent you, because of things that I had done or said in the past, but also I think because I had changed. And I think for him, it was hard to grasp the concept that like somebody can just let go of this identity of who they were being and just be like, that's not who I am anymore. And I'm very proud of myself for completely changing as a human being for the better of everybody, not just for myself, but for my friends, for my, cousins, my parents. Like, I truly am the best version I can be right now. And I love that I decided that for myself, because had I not, I don't think I would be here. I really don't know if I would be chasing my dreams, if I would be as vulnerable as I am. Like, I find myself wanting to let down even more walls with the internet. So basically, in my most recent relationship, what ended up happening for us to break up again was I just realized, I guess, that during our breakup, I actually had grown a lot and he had actually regressed. Like, he was smoking cigarettes again. He was gambling. He was doing things that like I wouldn't actually want my partner to be doing. And so I was like, I'm different. Maybe it'll work, right? It'll work because I'm different. And like, no, it didn't. It didn't end up working because I was different. It ended up not working because he wasn't different. We both had to be different in order for it to work. And I would catch glimpses of him, of hope or potential of him thinking positively or saying something nice. Because I remember for a long time, he was like, words don't matter. Like, I can be as mean as I want to be, essentially, and it shouldn't affect you. And like, yes, like you should be able to block people out, like, okay, I should be able to have control of like, I'm not going to let your feelings or emotions affect me. However, that's just not the human experience. I like, if somebody down the street calls you ugly, your first instinct is more than likely to be like, ouch, like, why did you have to say that? That's really mean. That hurt my feelings, rather than being like, something's wrong with you, and so you're projecting onto me, which now my mindset is like that. But it took a while for me to rewire my brain to be like, okay, this person honking in traffic, it's because of them. Like, they're stressed, or like people like tailgating me when I'm driving. It's like, they're upset that they're late, and that I'm taking my time, and I take my time because I'm not rushing myself, because I'm not in a rush. It's your fault that you're late. Don't put it on me. It's not because of other cars driving quote unquote slow, or the speed limit, or not as fast as you're going. It's because of your lack of planning. And so the more that I realize that like I can take accountability for my things, I can apologize, and I can just work on myself, the more that I've found that like I have to let go of people in my life. And that includes friends who are close to me, family members who are close to me. It's just like, it's not that you don't love them. It's just that you're just not growing at the same pace. And so that's why I had to leave my relationship, was that I outgrew him. And it's like I asked myself, like, could I have had more patience? And like, maybe, but at the same time, I just feel like I can't make up excuses for anybody anymore. If I find that if I'm outgrowing you, it's like, I'm just trying to reach the moon, like I'm here trying to grind and follow my dreams. And if you're going to sit here and tell me you can't, or why are you doing that? Or like, maybe you should do this differently. And it's like, I learned all this stuff in the artist way. People who are the first to critique you are the first ones to not even do their own shit. The first person who's going to comment on your video and be like, oh, you could do better. Or like, oh, that's so bad, is somebody who probably hates their life, is somebody who probably really wishes that they could be as confident as you to be able to post their art online. And so I've really tried flipping the script and just to be like, what can I control? And what I can control is how I show up in the world. And so I try to show up as authentically, as calmly as I can. And that wasn't always the case. I feel like people really saw me as a calm person, and I feel like I can be, but like, especially back in the day, if I was like really triggered or like, I don't know, upset, like, yeah, I would be fucking screaming, and I would be like, and I used to say things that were so mean and so out of whack. Like, I'd be like, and that's why you can't fucking make me come, and that's why your dick is small, and that's why your mom don't like, and I'm just and some of it might not even be true, and I'm just like, and that's why and I remember even telling my ex, and I'm like, and that's why your family doesn't want to fucking talk to you, because I can't talk to you. And it's like, sometimes when people say things, like, it is the harsh truth, but that doesn't give me the right to say something that is so mean just because I'm hurt. So again, hurt people. And once I learned how to heal hurt Gaby, the more that I've been able to just spread more love, because I don't feel hurt anymore. I don't feel hate towards people. I don't feel resentment. And so like in my relationships, I've had to like, learn and do and be better. And so I've learned a lot about myself over the years. And I think that life in general is about that. It's about, trying to fall in love with yourself all over again, even when you can't recognize yourself in the mirror. And I think that's what happened, is I looked in the mirror and physically I could not recognize myself, but also like mentally and emotionally, I really couldn't recognize myself. And I've been talking about it recently with my friend Christian, that I do actually feel like your body is a direct reflection of how much you love yourself. And that's not to say that that means you're skinny, you're happy, or that means because you're big, you're not. That's not what I'm saying at all, because you could be very thin and you could be extremely anxious and you could very well hate your life. And the opposite could also be true. You could also be heavy and you could also hate your life, or you could be heavy and really love your life and be super happy with who you are. But I think it's about, can you look at yourself in the eyes and be like, I love myself. I'm very happy with who I am as a person. And I feel like when you are really happy with who you are as a person, and when you really do love yourself, you take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. And it doesn't need to look as extreme as like mine can look like, with like, you know, going to the gym pretty regularly, which I've honestly started slowing down. I don't know if it's because of the winter or if it's just because I just don't feel like I have to prove anything to myself. It's just like, I'm more intuitive. Like the other day I woke up and I was like, I'm just going to do yoga. I'm just going to do yoga and I'm going to chill in the house. And it was like 5 a.m. and I'm doing yoga and I loved it. And I think like that's what it's about. It's about listening to your body and asking yourself, like, can I push myself? And that the same thing goes for me practicing music and me doing things. It's like, can I push myself in this moment? Can I give myself another 5 more minutes of reading, of playing the piano, of going out for a walk, of talking on the phone with my grandma? Can I give myself that? Or am I overextending myself by staying at this party another 15 minutes? Am I overextending myself by staying late at work because they asked me to? Am I overextending myself by, driving, an hour to see somebody when I am literally only going to, have sex to avoid my feelings? Like, ask yourself these things. Like, is this going to benefit you? Do you feel like this is what you really want to do right now? And like, listen to that. And so ask yourself that in relationships, like, is this what I want? And for me, I had to realize that is like, I can't do this forever, because my cousin, when she was getting married, she did marital classes and they told her, like, whatever problems you have now in your relationship, you have to be okay with dealing with for the rest of your life. And yeah, there might be things that annoy me about somebody, because that's just natural whenever you're dating them, is like my ex would have this one very specific laugh that would only really happen when he was on the game with his boys. And for me, it just didn't sound authentic. It just sounded like a very forced laugh. And that was something that bothered me. But at the same time, like, could I deal with that forever? Yeah, I could. But could I deal with somebody pushing me down and telling me that I can't accomplish my dreams? Absolutely not. And he did tell me that a couple times, like, are you going to be 90 years old chasing a dream, Gaby? And there would be a couple moments where he'd be like, I really see it happening for you. But I think the biggest thing is he never apologized for the mean things that he did say, saying, hey, I'm sorry that I told you that, you'd be 90 years old chasing your dream and, it's not going to happen for you. I didn't mean that. I said that because I was hurt, and I actually do think it can happen for you. And more so, like, for him, it was like, there was no accountability. And I think that is a huge component in a relationship, is accountability. It's being able to say, I'm sorry. Hey, I messed up. Hey, I'm going to work on this. And like, actually seeing that progress. And I do think that me being with him did trigger him, because it's like, oh, Gaby can change, but I don't want to. He'd say that all the time. Like, you just got to love me for who I am. This is who I am. And it's like, okay. And I do love you for who you are, but do my kids deserve for you to be their dad? Absolutely not. My kids deserve so much better. And things really change when I put things into perspective of, if my daughter were in this, would I want for her to stay? And the answer was no. I would be like, you fucking go. You deserve to be with somebody who is completely supportive of your dreams. For the longest time, he didn't even know the name of this podcast. He didn't even follow the account. And not that I shouldn't have to ask you to do that. You should want to do the bare minimum of supporting me. But he didn't, right? He didn't go out of his way to make me feel seen or heard or acknowledged. And so for me, it's like, I deserve to be with somebody who shows up for me because I show up for them. And I feel like now I know what I deserve. And so it's just kind of like a waiting game of when things align for me. But I kind of think, it's similar to Taylor Swift in that like her career is kind of built on breakups and dating and life, that potentially that might be my career, because if I am pursuing music, music is created from life experiences and things that happen, and you get inspiration from things. So I'm just kind of like enjoying the ride. I'm not actively seeking a relationship. I do feel like I am like healed and I could enter something if I really wanted to, but I'm kind of just at the point where it's like, if it's meant to be, it'll be. I'm not going to sit here and force anything. And at the very least, what I'm going to do now is fall in love with myself and give myself the relationship that I deserve, which is being able to chase my dreams, being able to put myself first, being able to give myself the time and energy that I know that I haven't done in relationships, because I have had the tendency to put people before me, their feelings before me, their passions before me, their goals before me. What do you want to do? Are you happy? Where do you want to eat? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I can't do that anymore. Where has that gotten me? It hasn't gotten me anywhere. I mean, I've learned a lot. I don't regret any relationship I've ever been in. I don't regret, could I go back and change things? Yeah, totally. I wish I hadn't said any mean things to anybody I've dated. I wish I hadn't lashed out. I wish I haven't screamed. I wish I haven't, raised my voice. Like, I don't like any of that stuff. And I don't like that I was that person. However, I know that that's not who I am now. That's not who I am anymore. And so I had to let go of the identities that I once held within me. And I'm like, that's not who I fucking want to be anymore. I don't want to be that Gaby. I want to be a Gaby who's tender, who's kind, who's loving, who's compassionate, who's caring. I don't want to be the Gaby who screams or yells or is hurtful. I don't want to hurt people anymore. And so, yeah, I guess that's like a general synopsis of like relationships in general in my life. Since then, I haven't been on a date. I've like hung out with guy friends, but I haven't like gone on a date, if that makes any sense. Like, they have expressed interest in me, but I haven't necessarily gone on like an official date. And I don't know when that'll happen. I'm sure you'll all be updated when that happens. But for now, what's also funny is like the people in my life who've reached out to me to like kind of like get to know me have been people who I've known since I was like 12, even like down to like 15 years old. And what I really do like, and something that I do notice, is that they're people who saw me before I really felt like I was somebody. Does that make sense? Because like there were people who really, really saw me when I was younger, who really saw me and were like, I'm 13 years old, scrawny, going through puberty, and they're like, you're so beautiful, right? And so it doesn't feel inauthentic when, as an adult, they're telling me these things, because like they saw me when I really didn't see myself. And so it's kind of like interesting to see this dynamic of, I mean, that's like all that I've ever wanted in a relationship. And I think that's all anybody ever wants, is just to like be truly seen. Like, this is who you are, and that is exactly what I want. And I do feel like anybody I've ever dated, and anybody in general, would be so lucky to be with me. I think, especially with who I am now, like whoever this person is going to be so lucky to be with me. But I think the biggest thing is that I've learned to be okay with myself. And I've learned that like, that's really not terrible. Like my company's great. My company's fun. I have a wonderful group of friends and people who support me. I have my tribe. And so I don't feel like I need that love, but that doesn't mean that, I obviously don't want it. I think everybody wants to share their lives with somebody, but I also think I'm okay with just sharing it with my friends if that's ever the case. And what's crazy is I feel like once you come to terms with that, that's whenever like love comes into your life. I also think that no marriage should come from two hurt people loving each other. I think that's whenever infidelity happens, that's when toxicity exists. I think the only way to really find true healthy love is when two healed people find each other, or when two people who are trying to heal find each other, because it's not going to work with one person healing and the other person not healing, you know, like that's what I went through. And it's like they have to be cognizant of their problems and wanting to work on it. That's the only way it's going to work. So it's not to say it's impossible, but it's just saying that they have to want better. You have to want better to be better. And you know, I'm just hoping that like the next person that comes into my life, they're at my level, or if not, they're above, and they can help guide me to wherever I'm meant to transcend to. But I feel like I've had the tendency to kind of like date people who not are beneath me. I don't mean to say that at all, or even below me. I just mean to say their level of consciousness is below mine. And so I basically, there's like a huge chart of the level of consciousness if you want to look into it, but it's essentially like the lower levels of consciousness are like guilt, blame, anger, and the higher levels of consciousness are like love, happiness. And like if your my level of consciousness has been higher than theirs, because a lot of them have been depressed, so like I almost like I make them happy, but that doesn't last for very long because they themselves aren't happy. You know, like I only got out of being depressed from my not most recent breakup, because we broke up twice. From the first time we had broken up, I was really fucking depressed, crying all the time, praying. Like I had to hit my rock bottom for me to be like, I never want to be here again. Absolutely ever. I never want to. And that's why I have to stay on top of my mental health with journaling, writing, talking to friends, you know, like doing things, because if I don't, I know I will fall back into that loop. And I know that, like, you know, thankfully I had my sister and cousins and family members and friends who would helped me get out of my depression. But at the same time, it's because I wanted to get out of it. And that's the key to it all, is like they have to want it for themselves. You can want something so bad for somebody, but it's not until they want it for themselves that real change will happen. And thankfully that was the case for me, is that I didn't want to feel that way again. I didn't want to put somebody else before me. I wanted to learn to love myself and to love life again, because I mean, I'm telling you, the world was so black and gray when we had first broken up, and I just blamed everything on myself, and I really felt like I was the problem. And I remember going to the kitchen and telling my mom, like, I don't want to do this anymore, just because of how hard it was. And then, you know, she expressed to me other things that she had been feeling as well, but depression it runs in my family. And I do think at some point kind of everybody has to experience their low point in order to want better, to like for their life to change. Everybody's going to experience loss. Everybody's going to experience heartache. Everybody's going to experience some type of hurt, right? That's just life. It's the price you pay, I guess, to be alive. But I'm just very happy that I've overcome so much. And I've allowed for people to be there for me, because it's hard to feel like you kind of deserve that, you know, because it's easy to be like, I don't want to burden people with my problems. I don't want to, you know, it's not theirs to deal with. But sometimes you just need a space to talk. And so if you need a space to talk, journal, make video diaries, whether you or not you want to post them, that's up to you, but keep them for yourself if you want. Go to therapy, talk to somebody, like read. You know how much reading about the brain and psychology has really, really changed my perspective on life. It's given me the outlook to be like, I reacted this way, and I did that because of something else that happened in my childhood, and I shouldn't have reacted that way, and how can I change that? It's just made me be like cognizant of like what I do and the decisions that I make and how I approach things. And I overall think it's made me a better person. So I think sometimes you just have to like do things to help you like almost like get out of your body and look at things from like a bird's eye view, to be like, actually, you shouldn't have said that in that tone of voice, or like, you know, that wasn't the right way to approach the situation, or like, maybe let's work on saying things nicer. So yeah, it's okay to work on yourself. We're all works in progress. I did say that correctly. My brain was like, huh? We're all works in progress, and I mean, that's life, right? It's just wanting to like work on yourself and to be better. And so like, let's do the damn thing. Like, let's be better, you know, let's want better for ourselves. Let's break these generational cycles. Let's stop allowing for trauma to allow us to hold on to resentment, to then find ourselves putting it onto other people, and potentially your kids, because you don't know how to regulate your nervous system. And that's a big reason why I'm so grateful I haven't had kids yet at this point, because it's like, I want to be the absolute best parent that I can be. And that's not to say that you can't, you will be, you know, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. But if I can, for the most part, control, you know, like, hey, I raised my voice at my kid and it was very uncalled for. And if I can just meet them where they're at and apologize, like, I can probably count on my hand how many times my parents have ever apologized to me. And I don't even know if my mom has ever apologized to me, but my dad apologized to me one time. It was like a backhanded apology. It was like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm right and you're wrong. But, you know, I still have had to forgive them for things that they've said or done. Which I guess maybe we'll do a whole episode on parenthood. But yay, relationships. If you are in one, I do recommend doing like weekly exercises of like, how can we make the relationship better? What are some things that you want to try? And just like, you have to keep the magic alive, because I do think that happens a lot in relationships, is that you just kind of do the same old things of like watching TV and staying inside and falling into the same patterns. And it's like, it's good to mix up the relationship. And another thing that I was thinking about recently too was, it is the little things. Because my ex would tell me all the time, like, Gaby, you get so hung up on the little things. And it's like, no, babe, the relationship is the little things. The relationship is 90% of the time the day to day. It's what are we doing whenever we wake up? How are we approaching life whenever we go to bed? What are you saying to me throughout the day? That is the relationship. 10% of the time it's the big things. It's the graduations, the baby showers, the funerals, the, you know, I don't know, like the arguments or whatever. But like the relationship, the day to day is what's most important. And on our day to day, it hit a point where it was just like, I don't like being around you. You don't make life easier or lighter for me. And so ask yourself, like, and express it. Because I mean, somebody was like, well, did you tell him that? And it's like, what do you think I did? Like, you think I just tolerated that and didn't say anything? Of course I spoke up for myself. Of course I was like, this is exactly what I need. This is how I need for you to approach things. This is how I need for you to talk to me in order for this to work. And the answer was, I can't do that. That's not who I am. That's not natural for me. You know, and maybe I should have known, because on his dating profile, he said that like, you got to be able to take a joke, because being mean is a part of his personality. And like, I will say that like, being mean can be funny sometimes. But like, it has to be done in a lighthearted way versus like telling somebody like your dreams are never going to come true. And I mean, one time I did tell him, and this isn't like super mean, but I mean, he had crooked teeth and they were so cute and I loved them. But one time he parked a little crooked and I was like, oh, just like your teeth. But like jokes like that to me don't bother me, because it's funny, right? But maybe it is hurtful, right? Maybe it is something that's hurtful for him. But that would be the point where he's like, actually, that's a really big insecurity of mine. I didn't like that you said that, you know, but I mean, thankfully that was never the case. But I mean, it is in those little moments where you do have to speak up for yourself, and you do have to say, this hurts my feelings, this bothers me, you know, or I really like whenever you do this. I love whenever you compliment me on my hair. I love whenever, you know, you tell me that I'm doing a good job or that you're proud of me. Like, relationships are communication. That's how you have a successful relationship, is by communicating with anybody in your life. Whether it be a family member, you know, your partner, a friend, even your boss. Like, you have to fucking communicate. So yeah, that's my life. Thanks for watching. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for watching this episode. If you have anything that you want to talk about, I am also taking story times, or any questions. So like when I was on Twitch, I would give advice. So if you feel like you need any advice on your relationships, feel free. Relationships, life, whatever. book recommendations, like whatever you want, like DM me. And you could potentially be featured on the podcast. And I just want you all to know that, like, it's okay if you're not perfect. I'm not perfect either. We're all meant to kind of be perfectly imperfect in our own way. But just know that if there's something that you don't like about yourself, like, you actually can change it. You just have to actively be doing it. So don't get so hung up on, like, I don't like this about myself. If you don't like something about yourself, change it, or change the way you view it. Like, and especially if it's something physical, I feel like that's such a, touchy subject, but for me, it's like, learn to love it, like, oh, well, my nose is a little bit more ethnic. Okay, but it makes you, right? Like, how many people can say that they have your nose versus like getting a nose job to like conform to like what everybody else's noses look like? Instead, look at it as like, I have my grandma's nose. I love my grandma. My grandma's so fun, and I think she's so pretty, and I have this attribute of hers. Or maybe like my laugh, like specifically, like my laugh is very loud, and some people are like, girl, like, I'm glad I'm not dating you because your laugh. Like, one of my cousins will say that because my laugh is like and like I breathe in between, and I never noticed that until he pointed it out. He's like, yeah, like, Gaby, your laugh. And I hated it for a long time, and now it's just like, it makes me. I've learned to love it. And I think that that's just what you have to do in life, is you have to like learn to love the things that you really can't control, and learn to change the things that you know that you can, which is how you react, which is how you approach things, which is how you talk to people. You can control those things. So have a wonderful day, and I will catch you all in the next episode.